AM 560, The Answer.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and a happy Veterans Day to all of the veterans out there and their families. I think what's the number? Represent about 10% of the U.S. population, do veterans. And on this occasion, all the good that veterans do, not just in serving our country, which is the first thing you think of course, understandably so, but also the skills that they acquire in the military and how they put them to use in their civilian lives. Our next guest has done just that. Her name is Sharpel Welch. She is a 2019 Civil Society Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, an Army veteran, Gulf War I, educator, youth community coordinator at Community Renewal International, which is a faith-based profit in Shreveport, Louisiana. And she's written a bit about how she is using the skills that she developed serving our country to serve young people and keep them away from bad choices like violence in her hometown of Shreveport. Sharpel, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So your service to our country, Gulf War I, and then give us the trajectory of your life after that. You went back home and you started to work with young people straight away?
Pretty much. I exited the military and actually settled in Houston. Had my family, raised my children in Houston, Texas, and came back home to Shreveport in 2008 after a hurricane. Now I was running an outreach program there in Houston for youth. I've always worked with young people since my early 20s. And did the same thing here in Shreveport, Louisiana. Was told by the mayor, somebody in the mayor's office about Community Renewal International. Found out that we were doing the same thing, had the same heart. My husband and I connected with them, and we've been working with Community Renewal since.
And how has your Army experience helped reduce youth crime and violence?
Well, I didn't learn what I do in a classroom. It was sort of, I learned along my way in life. And I realized that these kids, it was easy for me to connect with the kids that I served because I was one of these kids. So the first thing that I noticed was there was a lack of discipline. Just simple discipline like yes, sir, no, sir, looking at somebody when you speak to them, answering questions when they were asked with more than a one-word answer. And so I took some of the discipline and some of the things that I learned in the military and began to teach it to the children through what we call a drill team. It was a performance drill team, and we used military movements and discipline and biblical scriptures for them to memorize. And that took off. It turns out the kids thought it was fun. And that's just one of the things we do in what we call a friendship house, which is where we live. Community Renewal has strategies to sort of revitalize and restore the relational fabric of communities from within the community. And we do that, my husband and I, through one of the tiers of that model called the Friendship House. And we work where we live, and so we are the neighbors to these families, and it's easier to connect and become family and sort of help them change the trajectory of their lives, sort of like the Army changed mine.
I want to go back to something you said that you can relate to these kids because you were one of them, and be a little bit more specific. You write, you were a mom at age 17, and
Yes.
so the and just how that informed not only your decision to join the military, to enlist, but also what you're doing, what you and your husband, your family are doing now.
Absolutely. So a little bit about me. I was born to a 16-year-old mother and a 21-year-old abusive father. And my mom dropped out of high school She later on divorced my father, married us, my stepfather, who was verbally abusive. He only finished the 7th grade. I have 3 siblings. My mom has 3 other children. None of them finished high school. I was the first in my household to graduate high school, and was able, really, academically, should have gone on to college. Wasn't able to do that, just didn't know how to get myself there. So as a teenage mother, I decided to go into the military. That way I could take care of myself and my child, and also send resources back to help my mother. And so I see children trapped in toxic situations every single day. And so I don't have to tell them what I think will work. I tell them what I know works for me, and it seems to be helping. Right now, the children are really excelling academically. We had our first 2 since we've been in this house to graduate high school, and one is at Dillard University. The other one will be starting at Wiley College in January. And so we are really changing the mindset first.
Well,
and just building relationships.
That's good. That's a huge accomplishment. That's awesome. But what did the Army teach you about yourself and about life, for those that are thinking about it?
So what the main thing that Army taught me is I discovered myself in the military. I wouldn't take those days back. Although I had some scary times in the military, I would do it all over again, because I discovered who I was at the core of my being. One of the scariest things that happened to me was being sent to war, what became war. We went over for Desert Shield, and I was on the advanced team. I was part of an ordnance unit. So we went down to prepare the bunkers to get the ammunition over to the front line. And it became Desert Storm. And what resonated, what I couldn't leave alone during my service, was the fact that the military always sent us where there was a need. We liberated. We went where we could help as a nation. And that was something that I found out through that experience, that I was probably put on earth to do, because I've been doing things like that in some capacity since. And so I try to get these kids to mine for their talents and mine for what motivates them. And sort of, if I don't have that skill, I put people in front of them that do, and sort of help them along the way, help them see that you don't have to become what you see every day around you. If you can envision it in your mind, we can get you there.
What is it that?
And I learned that in the military.
And so, what is it that policymakers, local, state, federal policymakers, don't understand about the cycles of poverty in certain areas, and particularly in urban centers, violence, and young people making bad choices? What is it they don't understand as they try to sort of legislate away some of these societal ills?
Well, the first thing is that government cannot do everything because it's not equipped to do everything. I think the biggest problem, and we at Community Renewal agree that the biggest problem in our communities, like the one that I live in, is the breakdown of the relational fabric in America. We are best friends with somebody 2,000 miles away through technology, but we don't know who's living and dying next door to us in our neighborhood. That has to change. We have to get back to villagizing our communities, no matter how large, so where everybody becomes a resource for everybody else. We have to get out of this greed and envy cycle that we are in, to start caring about our neighbor again. And so that's one of the things. The other thing is that when we talk about the economy, and the economy is doing pretty good right now, things like that mean nothing to the people in my community, because they are not operating in a middle-class society. They have different rules. They're really just surviving from day to day. And so if we can get grassroots organizations and people who care, just people who care, to connect with us and just focus that caring and systemize that caring in such a way that we can partner with the government in order to bring these neighborhoods along, I believe we'll see a big change in our world.
Yeah, you write, among other things, talking about sort of the culture change that needs to happen, the mentality change. Free healthcare sounds great, but it doesn't mean much for children if their parents won't take them to a doctor, or, and I would just add, or if their parents aren't around to take them to the doctor. So when you talk about sort of the relational fabric, that starts with the family, right? The nuclear family.
Absolutely. Starts with the family. And if the nuclear family is not intact, it spreads to the community, to the neighbors. And so growing up, I had that. I didn't have a friendship house or a community renewal growing up, but I had those adults in my neighborhood who looked out for me. I had teachers who saw something in me that was different and mined my talents. And I'm just trying to recreate what we had growing up in our youth today.
And that one-on-one attention that you're providing, that structure that you're providing, combined with the experience you're bringing to the table, you see you're describing success stories of young people who have changed their attitude about things, persistence, work, personal responsibility, and so forth. But I mean, that's really how it has to happen, right? It's at the granular level. There's not a department or a program that's magically going to wave a wand and accomplish that across a large population. It's all at the ground level where you're at.
It's at the ground level. It can spread into bigger. This is scalable, absolutely, but it comes back to relationships. It comes back with building a network of mutually enhancing relationships, positive relationships that will get the changes done. I mean, we still have those people in our neighborhoods that may do the wrong thing, but when they become the exception and not the rule, that's when we see real change in our community.
Sharpel Welch is a 2019 Civil Society Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, Army veteran, as you heard, served our country in Gulf War I, an educator. She is a youth community coordinator at Community Renewal International, which is a faith-based nonprofit that brings together caring partners to restore the foundation of safe and caring communities, and she's doing that where she grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. Sharpel, thank you so much for your service to our country and for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dan. Please have your listeners go to communityrenewal.us to learn more about our organization and to find out how they can replicate this model in their city.
All right, communityrenewal.us. Got it. Thank you so much, Sharpel. Appreciate it.